she spoke about how she knows that God is within, and that the path is about finding the God within. And then she comes here and she sees so many physical representations of God, statues of Krishna, paintings of God, and that's a God outside. And why would we spend so much time and energy worshiping a God outside when really it's about the God inside, and how to distinguish between the two, right? And find ultimately the path that brings them together. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us, and I'll just speak quickly about Krishna because you mentioned Krishna. He tells us something very beautiful. He says, in whatever way the devotee worships me, I will come to the devotee in that form. So God is infinite. God manifests according to the Indian Hindu tradition. The divine is infinite. Because he's infinite and omnipotent, so he can do anything, he appears in a variety of different forms at different times throughout history, in different ways, depending on what the culture, the situation, the society required at that time in order to bring light back to the darkness. That being said, so just hold on to that thought for a moment. I'm going to give you sort of a different thought, and then I'm going to tie them together. We're also told that every single thing in the universe is pervaded by God. Our Upanishads tell us everything in the universe is pervaded by God. There is nothing that is not pervaded by God. And it doesn't say there's more God in a tree than in a blade of grass. I mean, when you're talking about infinity, there's no such thing as more infinity and less infinity, right? God lives everywhere and in everything. So that inner God that you're talking about is the same infinite divine that lives in everything, and you are also part of that everything. So therefore, God also lives in you. The ultimate goal, though, is to get people connected to God. Imagine you're a mother. You've got 5 kids. Ultimately, really, your only goal is they all should love you. Ideally, they should also do what you say, but most importantly, they all should love you. One of them calls you mom, one calls you mommy, one says mama, one can't yet speak and just mama. One is already a teenager and calls you mom. It doesn't bother you. You're not going to take the one who calls you mommy and say, call me mama. What matters is that they're connected to you. And if on your birthday, the older one, who's actually got an allowance, and so a little bit of money to spend, goes out and buys you a beautiful Hallmark card, and maybe even a little something. The younger one, who doesn't know anything, but knows it's your birthday, takes some nice paper and crayons and scribbles on paper for you. She thinks it says happy birthday. Nobody else can understand what it says, but in her heart, it's happy birthday. The middle one wants to make you breakfast in bed, but he's young, doesn't know how to operate the kitchen, burns the toast, spills the coffee on the stairs coming upstairs. Are you going to love the older child more because the Hallmark card that he gave you is actually objectively beautiful and professional and costs some money? and actually says happy birthday, whereas the one that your young daughter wrote is illegible scribble? Of course not. What matters is the love. So when we talk about connecting to God, the ultimate point is just connect. And what we have seen throughout history, what the sages and the saints and the rishis and the spiritual and religious teachers throughout history have seen is, for many, many people, it's very difficult to conceptualize of a God with no form, no beginning, no end, no name, no shape. Just close your eyes and feel God within you. Those are the paths of meditation. They're the paths of wisdom. And yet, there's also the path of devotion. And it's a very beautiful path. And the devotion is a path of loving the divine outside of you. Loving the divine in the form of, for example, Krishna. And yet, the greatest devotee of Krishna, who's worshipped, is someone named Mirabai. Mirabai is the greatest living historical devotee of Krishna. And you know what happened at the end of Mira's life? She literally merged into Krishna. She walked into a temple, a Krishna temple. She had come from a royal family. It's a long story, I won't go there. Point is, she's a historical figure. This is not mythology. This is history. Had worshipped Krishna, carried a statue of Krishna her whole life, married Krishna. Krishna was all she wanted. And at the end, she walked into a Krishna temple, closed the door, and by the time people came and opened the door, there was only Krishna. And she's worshipped, not just because of the devotion, but because ultimately she attained that state, which is the culmination of devotion. The lover, the beloved, and the love become one. But that's a very difficult place to begin. And so what the path of devotion gives us is a place to start. You love someone. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when your union is complete and you're in each other's arms, you're one. There's no you and he or whatever. You've become one. You've merged into beautiful love. But it didn't start like that. It started sitting away and you'd smile and you'd look and you fall in love. And as you follow the path of love, real love, not love with expectation, not love, as Puja Swamiji says, we go to God with a shopping list. Not that type of love. But the real love, at the end, it becomes God on the inside anyway. So don't worry about where you start. Start somewhere. If you can find and worship God within you, great. If it's easier for you to worship God in form, and if not Krishna, in the form of a tree, in the form of your grandmother, in the form of Christ or Mohammed or Adonai, it doesn't matter. Start somewhere. It'll take you to the place you want to go.
That's cool. I love many.
Wonderful. There's nothing, the example that I always give is, and I'll conclude here, but the example that I always give is, let's say, what is your name?
Shireen.
Shireen, okay. So I love Shireen. Now I'm an eyes person, okay? So when I connect with Shireen, I connect with her eyes. And when I go home, I write poems and songs about her eyes, and if I were an artist, I would paint pictures of her eyes. Now, her husband also loves her. Maybe he's more of a hands person. He really likes to hold hands. And so he writes poems and songs about the strength of her hands, but the softness of them, and they always guide him where he wants to go. And if Ivana comes to know Shireen, she's going to love her also. But she's going to maybe what Ivana needs is a shoulder to lay her head on. And so when Ivana goes home, she's going to write poems and songs about the softness but sturdiness of her shoulders. Now, we all who are sitting together understand Shireen is one. And we're not going to fight amongst ourselves about whether her eyes are better or her shoulders are better or her hands are better. Now take it a few thousand years from now. My descendants are reading my poems and my songs and looking at my pictures, and they think that Shireen is eyes. Ivana's descendants, reading all of what she's written and seeing her pictures, think that Shireen is shoulders. His descendants think that Shireen is hands. And now there's this concept that actually the hands and the eyes and the shoulders are three separate gods. And we're going to fight over them. They couldn't possibly be the same one because, look, the descriptions are so different. And then we fight. No. Love so many gods. Love all of them. Love every form. Because ultimately it's just like we're describing the shoulder and the elbow and the hands and the eyes and the hair. And she's one.